welcome to the Unwashed Asses, episode 9. 0 and 09. Ha ha ha. Recorded March, what is today? The 20th? Yeah, March 20th, 2017. Been away for a while. You'll notice the audio quality is a little bit fuckered up because I am now recording with my phone because I haven't had time lately to do a show. Well, I don't know. That's a bit of a lie. I've been in a deep, dark hole of depression and not really been doing anything. Been putting a lot of personal projects and projects I owe other people off to the side, so I apologize profusely for that. But things are finally turned around, and we're able to get a show recorded. Except, work schedule changed, and now I'm just exhausted when I get home. So we're gonna record this during work, on the company dime. Well, I don't know. That's on the company dime. I'm on my lunch break. So I got a new recording app for the phone. Did a couple test recordings. By a couple, I mean one for 30 seconds, and it seemed to sound all right enough. Well, I wish I could remember the name of this fucking app here. Voice Recorder. I'm using Voice Recorder on the Android, and we'll see how it goes. It seems to have some good functionality as far as how it works. I mean, it's essentially you just hit the record button and it gives you your levels. You can save it. You can name them. You can export them. Do all kinds of crazy stuff. So this might help offset the downtime where when I get home at 8 o'clock at night after working 12 hours, I don't have to try and focus and put together a show, which, I mean, honestly has been the hard point. Like, I have topics to talk about, then when I sit down to do it, like, I literally scrapped the last episode because I wasn't having a good time, broke down halfway through it, and you guys don't want to hear me cry and sob and whine like a little bitch. So yeah, we got rid of that recording, and no one will ever hear that, and that's the end of that. So this episode, what are we talking about? We got Logan. Went and saw that with the girlfriend. Love her very much. We'll talk about that. Dreams and the importance of them or lack thereov, and the Germans. So yeah, buckle up, kids. We're back. It's going to be a good episode. But if you want to, keep shows like this and Zero Lives coming, head on over to patreon.com/0n09. Pitch me $1 a month. Every little bit helps. Gives me not only a little bit of motivation, but it can help give better quality to the shows themselves as far as, new equipment, microphones, soundboards, actual physical soundboards, so I can control the levels and produce essentially better quality. But it's a value for value model. If you find any value in what it is that I do, pitch in $1. That's all I ask. $1 a month. That's not much. And you get all kinds of, content, at least 4 hours a month with this, another 4 for the Zero Lives, and then went ahead and got a separate Patreon for Friday Night Smite, but that's at least 15 hours worth of content for that show alone. Plus, God knows what else I put out, and then we'll throw on the Patreon feed. So, again, patreon.com/0n09. But enough about how I pay for the show. Let's get on with it. So, went and saw Logan. What was it? Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night. Went out, had a lovely dinner with steak and... Not steak. Why did I... Because I was going to say steak and mushrooms, but no, it was a mushroom and Swiss burger. It was delicious. It was so good. Oh, my God. But I'm finding as I get older and I'm trying to change my eating habits, I can't eat my changing habits. I'm avoiding the red meat and sticking mostly like with chicken and tuna, trying to be healthy. And it's working well for the most part. I definitely don't feel as fat and bloated as I used to. I'm still like fat. There's no getting around that. I mean, it's going to take a lot more hard work on my part before the old man tits stop sagging lower than my balls. But we're getting there, slowly but surely. But anyways, yeah, went out, had a burger, and it was so good. So good. And the place we go to, it's hit or miss. I've had spoiled milk there before, undercooked chicken. I'm not going to name names here for fear of, you guys, the Legion, descending upon them and destroying them through Yelp reviews. But it was pretty good this time around. We got to sit in the back room. We were all by ourselves, had a lovely dinner, and then we got our tickets and we went to go see the Logan. And Jesus fucking Christ, I am such an old man now. And I know I mentioned it, if not the deleted episode, then the last episode of like saying, oh, the Google and the YouTube is like the gray hair is sprouting from my beard and on my temples as they're like burrowing into my mind. Like you have to throw the in front of everything. But I digress. So, Logan was, as I was thinking about it after I saw it, and kind of put a note here that this one's going to be pretty spoilery. I don't do like the spoiler free talks, especially when I got to fill 15 minutes worth of time. So it's you've been warned at this point. You can go ahead, skip forward about 15 minutes, and when you hear the buffer play, then you're safe and you've avoided all the spoilers. But here we go. So Logan being the third of the Wolverine standalone trilogy, it's confusing as far as why he's got what he has going on. The entire movie, it's based off the Old Man Logan comic series, but very loosely. Like, there's not a one-to-one relation, mostly because I imagine the Old Man Logan story, it's tied into several other properties in the Marvel Universe, which Fox doesn't have the rights to. And so it's been modified and tailored to fit into the existing X-Men storyline, which it works well, except for the fact that you need one of those boards on a wall where you have all the pictures and notes and the red yarn connecting everything together, because when they soft rebooted the franchise but decided to keep it in the same universe with the X-Men First Class, it threw such a fucking monkey wrench into everything, and they're trying so hard to make it fit together, and it's hard at times, especially when you consider what was it? It wasn't First Class, and it wasn't Age of Apocalypse. It was the Days of the Future Past, the second of the Youngins trilogy with I can't even think of their names, but it's the younger crew. It's not the original X-Men trilogy folks. So that one focused entirely on them traveling back in time and changing a few things, so the Sentinels and Trask don't wipe out all mutants. And I want to say that took place after the second Wolverine movie, and you're probably wondering why is that important? And this is where I'm kind of confused on the issue, because the entirety of Logan, he is sick. He's not necessarily dying, but he's not healing nearly as quickly as he used to. He's not as invulnerable. When he gets shot, it takes him days now to heal, and he has actual scars, and he's constantly coughing. And coming with the background knowledge from the comics, I always thought it was mostly because the adamantium, when it was molded onto his, or grafted onto his skeleton, it's still a foreign body. So his healing factor is essentially working overtime, trying to compensate and destroy that essentially infection. And it's never going to get rid of the adamantium, which is fine, but over time, it slowly wears Logan down and his ability to heal and recover, and then that affects his his ability to age gracefully, so to speak, because he's been around for hundreds of years, but eventually it starts, it's like a snowball effect. He's going to age more rapidly. But the way they did it is that it's the year 2029, and so the last time we saw him was, I don't even remember. This is why I need to do research and actually put show notes together. But the Wolverine, the second movie, wasn't all that long ago. So say it's like, I don't know, a 15-year time span difference. And all of a sudden he's gotten really, really old. And that's quite the leap forward. Now, I initially thought it was because of what happened in the Wolverine, where Silver Samurai ended up stealing some of his mutant powers, and namely, the healing factor. But at the end of that movie, because he had his claws cut in half, he had the bone claws instead. But what we see in this movie is that he's got the full-blown adamantium claws on both hands. And so that's where the conflict exists for me, as far as when they traveled back in time. Was that after the fact, and that kind of wiped out the Wolverine storyline, where he never got his claws cut off and he has the full adamantium? That would explain the claws, but it doesn't explain the reduced healing factor, because the reduced healing factor would be perfectly explained by that movie, because it's such a rapid change as far as the time frame fitting, him not having the ability to heal nearly as quickly. So it's confusing at best. But he's become essentially a limo driver at this point, and is working out in the West. The entire movie, it's through and through a Western, as far as thematically and the story they're trying to tell, where, like the deputy, sheriff, what have you, that type of vigilante character has to reluctantly take on a responsibility that he doesn't necessarily want, in the form of getting Laura, otherwise known as X-23, up north to safety, and they're being hunted down by not necessarily a group of vigilantes, but in this case it's the government who created Laura, X-23, and they're trying to bring her back in, if not kill her outright. So they never outright say it, but something happened to the X-Men themselves in Rochester, and my theory is that it was Professor X that ended up killing them, because Professor X is in the movie, but he has either Alzheimer's or like Lou Gehrig's disease. Something's destroying his mind physically. And Wolverine is working with, he's like buying drugs illicitly, trying to, medicate the professor and keep his seizures under control and keep his mind together, because what happens is, Professor X, he's the most powerful telepath in the world, excluding Jean Grey, and when he has these seizures, it damn near kills people. The way the movie portrays it is, it's kind of like this debilitating shockwave that continuously pulses, and everybody except for like Logan and X-23 are just immobilized and are in an excruciating amount of pain. And so they keep hinting at the Rochester of that, and Professor X is super sad about something that happened. He says, "I don't deserve peace," blah, blah, blah. So my theory is that when he started to lose his mind to this disease, he may have killed the bulk of the mutants at the school. And that's the other thing, is that there aren't mutants in this world any longer. Wolverine is one of the last. You don't actually, aside from X-23, there are only 3 other mutants in the movie. Supposedly, one of the directors at this government-funded research facility created a type of cure to wipe out the mutants. And as such, again, in like that 15-year span, they're no more. They don't exist any longer. So, as far as the X-23 storyline, it follows it fairly closely, except instead of being like a girl in her late teens, early 20s, Laura's like a 9-year-old girl. And she is broken out of this prison / training facility by one of the nurses because the way they're working it is they're not necessarily trying to create another Wolverine outright, but they are trying to create an army of superpowered soldiers. And so they don't all have claws and healing factors. They all these kids have like different abilities, and X-23 is, you know, the Wolverine claw. She has his DNA, Wolverine clone, not claw. But the project itself stops when they create an X-24, which is just a straightforward Wolverine clone of Wolverine as far as like age, abilities, all that. So he's like Wolverine in his prime, but fully savage. So when they create that one, they're like, okay, well, we got what we wanted, so let's go ahead and wipe out all these kids, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As far as like you invested all these time and resources, and as we saw in Deadpool, they have these control collars that could effectively keep the kids under control. If that was the problem, there's no need to kill them. Throw these control collars on. So it just seems like a waste that they're going to start offing these kids just because they've created a specimen that's supposedly under control. Because then, even then, it's contradictory, because later in the movie, once X-24 is released, he's not fully under control. They've got to like work to rein him back in, because he goes into, you know, the classic Wolverine berserker rage, and you can't stop him. So the nurse breaks out this X-23, Laura, and she tracks down Wolverine and says, you know, you need to help her. You have to get her to North Dakota, where they can arrange this time for them to cross into the Canadian border where they'll be safe. And he wants no part of it. I think, you know, it's largely the Wolverine guilt, and it's the typical storyline as far as he feels bad about something he did or doesn't want to get mixed up because he's afraid of hurting people. Eventually he's getting kind of forced into the situation and comes around and does the noble thing. And it's their story as far as them. Once Wolverine finds the girl, these government agents are now tracking the girl and Wolverine, and then they find Professor X because Wolverine had been taking care of him. And it's a road trip with the three of them moving north. And it's endearing, and it's sad at the same time because Professor X, with his disease, he behaves like somebody with Alzheimer's, and my Nana actually had it. So watching those scenes of his states and tantrums, it brought back memories. I'm not gonna lie, I'm tearing up now thinking about it, and I was then. So they portrayed that extremely, extremely well, and the stress and frustration that falls upon them, those that have to take care of them, and that was definitely very, very well done. So the movie itself is very depressing and sad in its overall tones, but Professor X is definitely, he provides the levity that's needed to bring everything back up, and injects quite a bit of humor into it just because of what is happening to him. And he's aware of it when he gets those moments of clarity. So it's just so very well done. The pacing it's spot on. There's not a moment that it feels like it's being bogged down or dragged out in any one area. It's moving at a good pace without you actually feeling rushed. There's proper character development happening. There's the quiet moments, and then there's the action moments, and it's all melded together in a very expertly told story. That being said, when it does come to the action, because this one is finally rated R, we get to see Wolverine in his full, grisly abilities. So there's a lot of blood. The violence isn't just like Wolverine stabbing a guy with his claws, no blood, him pulling out and then, dropping the guy on the floor. No, he will get his claws stuck into like somebody's head and then swing them around like a rag doll. He cuts off limbs entirely, and they're not afraid to show the shot of where the claws actually go into the head and then poke out the other side. And the same applies for Laura, because she has Wolverine's claws as well, and it's just as grisly. Like, one of the first scenes we see with her, especially like when shit's about to hit the fan in reality for the first time, she's walking out with another, like a full-grown man's head in her arms. And so I wouldn't say that it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's fairly intense as far as the violence being shown. And that being said, I was cackling like a fucking madman, because this is Wolverine. This is what we had been waiting to see for ages, and just being able to kind of revel in the character being done justice was fantastic. And in the end, you see, you move through major arcs as far as before the movie's kind of out that a lot of people are going to die. This is their way of tying off one story thread and then beginning another. Namely, we see the death of Professor X at the hands of X-24. Wolverine ends up dying in a similar fashion, mostly because he takes more damage than his healing factor can take care of, and he eventually passes on due to the wounds he receives in a final battle. And we get a very touching moment with him and Laura, where, because he provided essentially the DNA for her, he is her father. And she knows this. And so seeing this little 9-year-old girl crying because of this person who not only was a hero to her, because for whatever reason, despite the X-Men being feared and hated in any universe they exist, once all the mutants are wiped out, then somebody goes ahead and writes all the comic books about them, and you see kids walking around with Wolverine action figures. So it's a complex relationship in that he was a hero to her, but he was also her dad. He was this legendary figure. And we don't see any acceptance of him being her father until that last moment. It's almost as if, with all the walls put up, they finally come down because she realizes he's not going to last any further. And then when they actually bury him, she ends up quoting some fucking Western movie they saw halfway, through the movie. And I'm the only one laughing in the theater, and my girlfriend's like, "Why are you laughing?" I'm like, "You don't see this? She's quoting the cheesy line from the Western they were watching in the hotel." And once she realized that, she started laughing too. So it was those moments of levity which kind of, again, they're uplifting. But I don't think that's what they intended as far as okay, super sad moment, and we're gonna have her quote this meaningful line, but don't laugh. It didn't make sense, but at the same time, it did. But yeah, as far as overall terms of quality, it's definitely the best of the three of the Wolverine trilogy, and probably the best X-Men movie we've had thus far. I mean, X1 and X2 were really, really good, especially considering that we weren't getting the current Marvel tier of superhero films. They set a new bar, which was later raised, but they're still really good. X3 was a fucking train wreck. The first Wolverine movie, an absolute train wreck as well. They destroyed the character of Gambit and Deadpool in one fell swoop. X2, not X2, the Wolverine, the second movie, was really good as well. And then we have the new franchise, which has another trilogy. So we have a total of 9 X-Men movies already? It's ridiculous. But yeah, then the first 2 of the new X-Men movies were good, and the third one was a fucking train wreck. It's just, I don't know. That's the thing. Fox is really, really hit or miss when it comes to these movies. And you look at like Logan and Deadpool, and they're stupidly good. Like no movie has any right being as good as they are. Those two are. And then you look at X-Men Apocalypse, and it's like, Jesus Christ. It's just like, I've seen better cosplay, and the acting's so stiff and terrible, and everything's rushed as far as character development and pacing, and it's all types of fucked up. But yeah, I mean, if you can see it, definitely go see it. The only complaints I kind of had weren't with the movie itself, but with the theater we went to, which had just completely been redone. So it's a good theater, but Beauty and the Beast actually came out this weekend, so the main theaters were playing that instead of Logan, and so they put it in kind of one of their smaller theaters, which would be nice if it was the sound that was off. It felt like they were only playing it out of the front speakers. And because everything was kind of compacted into one little room, the screen was smaller, and it felt more like you're watching a movie in somebody's basement with a really nice setup instead of a theater. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but still really, really good. And if you've been a fan of Wolverine at any point, or you like a good Western story, then by all means, go out and see this. Alright, y'all. So, yeah, terrible intro. But, I don't have my flow. I don't have my flow because I'm several hours between segment recordings. So, yeah, it's damn near 51 degrees out right now. And, whew, it's warm. Had to take off the jacket earlier, throw on the windbreaker. Now I'm thinking the windbreaker's a little warm. I have to get rid of that. But I know that come fall, when we start dipping down from like 70, 75 to 50, like, fuck, it's chilly. This is perfect. I'm going to go get a jacket, maybe a scarf, and go get some hot chocolate. But right now, I don't know, man. Fuck the heat. I don't like summer. I don't like sweating, and I sweat like a sumbitch, and it's bad, and I know it's coming, and yeah. So, no, I'm still at work, sitting in my truck, waiting for my next job to be ready, and yeah. So, dreams. The dreams are fucked up, and I don't know that there is a normal sense when referring to that, because everybody has fucked up dreams, but I don't know. I view dreams kind of as a way of looking at the subconscious, at kind of a glimpse into who you actually are. Now, this could be true, this could not be true. I'm not even entirely sure that dreams have any real relevancy. It could just be your brain moving everything from short-term storage into long-term storage. So, that being said, god damn, do I have some fucked up dreams. Most recently, well, I shouldn't even say most recently, but within the past week, I had a dream that just made me feel like a gigantic piece of shit, where I had this girlfriend that I was seeing, and she had a kid. Now, beyond that, I don't really know anything about this girl, except I didn't like her. And in the situation, I was trying to find a way out of the relationship. She wasn't, like, she didn't even have a face. There's nothing about this girl. I knew I didn't like her. And the dilemma I was running into was that her kid had died. Like, for whatever reason, the kid was just dead. Much like the non-existent girlfriend, this non-existent kid had died, and I was torn up about it. I felt bad. I was, very sad that the kid had died. I ended up liking them quite a bit, and like, being very selfish in my dream, I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I can't leave her now. Her kid just fucking died. And I remember she was crying on my shoulder and saying, oh, you're the only reason I keep going is because I have you around. I don't know what I'd do if you weren't here. And just weeping on and on, this invisible, non-existent girlfriend. And selfish asshole me is just thinking, shit, I'm stuck now. I can't get out of this. I would be such a fucking cunt if I broke up with her after her kid died, and I didn't have a good reason. I knew I didn't like her, and I wanted out, and it was goofy, and it made me realize when I woke up, like, I am a piece of shit. Like, but and I'm gonna try and spin this around in a way that makes me not look like a bad guy for something I didn't even do. Is it fair to her that I'm in a relationship and I don't actually genuinely care for her? Or wouldn't it be better if she was with somebody who actually wanted to be with her? I mean, I think that's fair. It's just deluding both herself and myself in the long term. I don't know. It was fucked up, and but I got my comeuppance because number one fear by far is definitely snakes. I can't stand them. They freak me the fuck out. I've tried to work past my fear of them, but anytime, like, it could be a tiny corn snake, not even like 6 inches long, and I will freak the fuck out. So when I sleep, I used to have night terrors as a kid, pretty frequently. I grew out of that a little bit. I still get them from time to time, but I am prone to sleepwalking and definitely talking into my sleep. And more than once, the cause of these dreams has been snakes. And the snake dreams, they're just the fucking worst. Because I can feel them and I know they're right there. And when I wake up, I'm still half asleep. So in my primal, fucked up, half asleep brain, I believe there's a snake around me. And so I'm freaking the fuck out. The two instances that really stick out, though, where there was actual, I got up out of bed and there was interaction. Once I was a teenager and I was sleeping at my cousin's house in a cot. And it was him and his brother. And I was sleeping in the middle of their bedroom on this cot. And I have no memory of this. Vague at best. But apparently I bolted upright in the middle of the night, shouting something about snakes on the floor. There's snakes everywhere. There are snakes on the floor. And just losing my goddamn gourd. They woke up and were trying to figure out what I was on about before I eventually just laid back down and was totally asleep again. And they knew about the night terrors and whatnot, and I don't think that's the first time I've done something in my sleep around them. But still, every now and then it comes up, and it's a good laugh. But the second time, I was living with a friend at the time, and was renting out a room in their basement. And my girlfriend was over. And the way the basement was situated was that it wasn't... it was all, finished except for the ceiling. All the pipes and the wiring were exposed, which makes sense because if you need to fix anything, you don't want to have to deal with fucking drywall over everything. So good on you. And doing what you need to do with keeping the maintenance up. I appreciate that. But I was laying in bed, again, middle of the night, totally zonked out. And this I do remember. I was asleep, and there were snakes in the dream. And usually the snakes are trying to eat me. In this instance, though, I knew where I was, and the snake itself, it looks like a viper. It had, kind of that slender neck leading into a fatter body, and it had the big round jaws and kind of like the arrow pointed head. It was coming out of the ceiling, which were the floorboards, and not like through a hole or even a portal, just like materializing out of the floor, creeping its way down very, very slowly to where I was sleeping. And I bolt up, wake up my girlfriend, and immediately get out of bed. And I'm wandering around the room in pitch black saying, there's a snake around here, there's a snake around here, I gotta find the snake, gotta find the snake. And I end up going back to bed after I'm not able to find the snake. And then in the morning, she's questioning me about it because this is the first time she's seen me do this. And she's like, you're terrified of snakes. So I imagine you had a dream last night that there was a snake. And I explained the whole thing about, the snake coming out of the ceiling and down towards us. And she's like, what I don't get, though, is if you're so afraid of snakes, why are you out of bed looking for it? And she makes a very, very good point, because when confronted with a snake, I'm going to freak out and try my very, very best to get away from it. To put things in like context, I do all right in like pet stores where they have snakes on display. The zoo, I'm a little more leery just because they're usually the big giant bastards. But there's still a fascination. I'm actively trying to work past my fear and understand why I'm so terrified of them. So if I see a snake in like an enclosed environment, I'll seek it out and try to confront that fear. I'm trying to work past it. I know it's irrational. But all of that logical thinking and rationality goes completely out the fucking window when I'm confronted with one kind of in the wild, so to speak, or under natural circumstances, where I remember one time I was at my grandparents', and the entire time, they lived in the same place from the time I was born until they passed and I was 30. And I was younger, probably just started college. And the entire time that I visited there, lived there, whatever, never ever saw a snake. Not once, except for one time. Now, the way their house was constructed was, it was a typical house, but they also built on this like barn garage thing. And they had, I don't think the sidewalk was poured yet going out to, or did they? No, they didn't even have a sidewalk that went out to the garage. No, they had like a little concrete pad, but I don't think there was ever a full sidewalk going out there. I could be wrong. But either way, this was a period in time where there wasn't a sidewalk there, so there's this patch of grass in between the house and the barn. And I always walked barefoot out there, and didn't have a care in the world. And so I'm walking out to the barn, and for whatever reason, look down, and at that moment see the biggest, blackest, most evil-looking snake slithering its way right between my legs. How I didn't see it until it was like, I don't know, it was probably like 3-4 foot long, halfway in between, my legs. I don't know that I've ever jumped higher or screamed louder than I did in that instant. And I run back into the house. I definitely get some shoes on, and everybody was over that day. We were visiting, and I'm losing my gourd. But my first instinct after getting the shoes on is, I have to go find a hoe, and I'm going to go kill this fucking snake. So there comes in that split reasoning as far as I'm so fucking afraid of this thing, and for all I know, it was probably like a garter snake and completely harmless. But completely terrified of it, yet I'm going to go seek it out. Maybe it's a thing of just having that known element. Like, I know where it is, I know what state it's in, so I can tolerate it. But that unknown, like, the fucker could be anywhere, and I can't stand that. So I go back out there, and I was like, don't kill the snake, don't kill the snake. And it's like, fuck you, I'm killing this snake because it's a piece of shit. No snake alive ever. They don't deserve to live. They're awful, awful creatures. And I couldn't find it. Couldn't find the snake, which is probably all for the best, because just even thinking about it makes my skin crawl had I found the snake and tried to kill it. But that reminds me, I hadn't even thought about this. Probably the garter snake fear thing comes from, one, they've got those creepy, like, dead fish, those white dead fish bellies, and you combine it with the black top. They're creepy little shits. But my sister used to pick them up, and when we would visit some relative, and I don't remember where they were all around that property, and she would chase me with them. And oh god lord, I fucking hated it. Fucking hated it. But another instance was I was seeing this girl when I was in college, and we would typically frequent this Denny's. And it's what college kids do. You're in your early 20s, late teens, and you have this newfound freedom. You're out living on your own. You go to visit a significant other or friends, and at that point you can stay up till all hours of the night. And so we would frequent this Denny's a lot, and would meet up with our friends. From time to time we'd all go there and get something to eat and just hang out for a few hours at like 2-3 in the morning, as you do. And one of her friends was there eating with us, and we were discussing that, that fear of snakes that I have, and just explaining how irrational it is, and I'm trying to get over it, and, just how fucked up I am about it. Her friend, the motherfucker, I will never forgive him for this, he had a pet snake. He went and got it, comes back to the restaurant. He had it in like this little bag, and he had it slid in the inside pocket of his jacket. And the way we were situated, we were sitting in a booth, and I was on the inside of the booth, and he was sitting next to me, boxing me in. Motherfucker pulls this snake out of his goddamn jacket, and I just immediately start losing my shit. And he's like, it's okay, just, pet it, touch it, hold it. It was a little snake. Like, it was maybe a foot long, if that. It was tiny. And I'm trying to explain to him in all the sincerity that my panic can produce, that I understand my fear is irrational. I've tried to get past it. I cannot get past it. Please get this fucking snake away from me. Please move. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. And despite it being 2-3 in the morning, the Denny's has a number of patrons in, and they're all witnessing this fucking meltdown I'm having. And it's not helping that somebody brought a fucking snake into a restaurant. That's weird enough in its own right, but the fact that he's inducing a full-blown meltdown in a grown man, I'm sure it was a good show. But there were a lot of concerned looks, and eventually the girlfriend at the time was able, like, dude, he clearly can't handle the snake. You gotta either get rid of it or you gotta move. And I don't even remember what happened after that. I know that. I don't know. My memory is just locked in that moment of terror. I don't know if he left or if he let me get up and go and I got out. I don't remember. I remember being freaked out about that tiny baby fucking snake. And that wasn't the first time that had happened either. God, I've got so many fucking snake stories. But there was another time where I was at a friend's house, and they were getting into this phase where they were going and catching and collecting rat snakes. And I mean, if you're even familiar with like Midwestern area, you know, there's rat snakes everywhere. They're tiny, they're harmless. And I knew they had a snake. I knew they had just caught one, and it was in one of the bedrooms, and I wouldn't go in there. I'm like, okay, I know where it's at. It's in a tank. It's fine. I can leave it alone. It'll leave me alone. I'm not happy about the situation, but it is what it is. And the family had like 6 brothers in it. They treated the pussy like a clown car. There were just a lot of people in that house. And one of the younger brothers thought it would be fucking hilarious if he went and got the snake and cornered me in one of the bedrooms with it. And again, it was a tiny snake, not even a foot. It was just itty bitty. And he did just that. I was sitting there playing a video game, and all of a sudden he comes walking into this room with a snake in hand. And I am just losing my goddamn gourd. I pick up a skateboard, and I'm backed in the corner. Like, I had the skateboard held by the trucks, and I'm like, have it pointed straight out at him, like taking, you know, wild swings, like, get the fuck away from me. And he's just having the time of his life, giggling like an idiot. And fucking asshole. God damn, is he an asshole. Eventually, I managed to talk him into walking out of the room, and then I left. I was done. No, I don't deal with snakes. And so when I have dreams about them, it's especially awful. To the point where, you know, the most recent dream I had about a snake, I was at home, and it was in the early morning hours, and the kitten I have, she's in that very playful phase or stage of life where she's not even, you know, 6 months. She might be 6 months old now. But if you've ever had a cat or a kitten, and you know how they are with, you know, pouncing and attacking things. And so laying in bed, she'll see movement under the covers, which would be like, you know, your feet, and she'll just boom, pounce and attack. And what sucks is she'll hide under the bed, and so she'll look for movement from like underneath the box spring, and if she sees it, she'll reach up over the lip of the bed and pop your feet. And she's still got her front claws, and so every now and then she'll dig a little deep, and it hurts. But I was having this dream about snakes, and they were the big fuckers like anacondas and constrictors, and in my mind, in my half asleep state, I thought there was one in the room. And it was a big black fucker, like, just, I don't know, the size of a tree trunk. And I know it wasn't like a realistic snake, because I don't know of any like all black snakes that get that large. But I knew it was slithering around by the foot of the bed. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't have my knife on me. My knife it's on the dining room table. If this thing attacks me, how am I going to get out of here? Because I can't stab it. I don't have anything to defend myself. Because the thing was easily like 12 foot long and was going to wrap me up and eat me. And once it constricted me, there was no getting out for me. And the way it was going to go down, I knew it was going to eat me from the feet up, and so it was terrifying in its own regard. And as I'm sitting there thinking, like, how do I get out of this? I can't run away because it'll probably be too fast, and if I do manage to get out of the apartment, then the cats are going to be left behind. I can't leave my cats behind because it's going to eat them, and then before I know it, I must have moved, and then, bam! The kitten smacks my feet, tags me a little bit with her claw, and I'm immediately jolted out of the dream, out of sleep, and I'm screaming in my bed. And, you know, just that reflex, I jerk my feet up like, you know, like there's a monster at the end of the bed and it's going to get me. And it took me a few minutes to kind of get my wits about me, and I was pissed off. I was so scared and so angry. I need to start going to bed with the water bottle and just spraying her in the face when she starts getting like that. Like, I feel bad because I know she's playing, but it hurts. I've got cuts all over my feet. And going through something like that, that's just not fun. So, I don't know. We could go from I'm a shitty human being to I dream about snakes a lot more than I would like, and here's the many reasons I'm afraid of snakes, and I don't know, it's a lot of tangents. But yeah, so if you ever want to freak me the fuck out, then snakes are definitely the way to do it. Just don't expect me to be friends with you after the encounter. Okay, so I don't even remember when I recorded the last two segments. That's just how incredibly fucked up my schedule is right now. Had some OT to work today, and you're going to hear the beeping from the notifications from Discord, because I have like 10 minutes to record and finish this show, so I'm going to finish the show. Son of a bitch. I don't know, can I just mute that so it just vibrates? Let's see. There we go. Alright, so what third segment. Oh yeah, the Germans. The Germans! I'm constantly trying to better myself. Make myself the best possible version of me that can be, because for a very, very long time I did not like myself at all. And I can't expect other people to like me if I don't like me. It just doesn't make sense. So part of that bettering myself was to learn a second language. I'm somewhat fluent in Spanish, if you consider fluency, the level where retarded children speak. I know enough to barely get by, and I can communicate with my customers to some level. There's a lot of Google Translate going on, though. So in Spanish, it only makes too much sense. But again, I know enough to kind of limp by. And to be honest, I'm not keen on having many conversations with folks in Spanish. It's more a thing of I'll learn it if I have to, but that's only going to be for work. It's not like I'm going to hang out behind the Home Depot or in the local taco family-owned restaurant and listen to them talk shit about me. No. So when my sister was younger, she was actually taught quite a bit of German by our great-grandmother, who was straight off the boat from Germany. And she learned a fair bit of it, but that was many years ago, and then our great-grandmother passed, and nothing really happened of it. And while we do have, German heritage, it's not, it's a funny thing. It's never one of those things you could really talk about. Otherwise people think, oh, well, you're going the neo-Nazi route, aren't you? And what do you think of that Hitler guy? Pretty swell, huh? And so it's not like one of those things like, oh yeah, I'm really into the culture and the heritage, and I want to learn to speak the language. There's still this stigma about it, decades later, but fuck it, right? So it's different. It's unique. I'm a special flower, and I want to be on my own and an individual. But the real reason I learned it, and this will show you how petty of a human being I am. I had been seeing this girl who had a very strong Pennsylvania Dutch heritage, and as was explained to me, the Pennsylvania Dutch were called that because the natives thought that when they were saying Deutsch, they were saying Dutch, but in fact they were German. So she spoke a smattering of very localized German. And it was at that time that I found Duolingo and had started their German course as an effort to try and impress this girl. And long story short, we broke up, and I became very spiteful of that. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep on keeping on, and I'm gonna learn this goddamn language. And I'm gonna do it just to spite her. Fuck it. She was wrong on this and that, and it was very bitter and definitely rooted in those feelings of resentment. And I kept at it here and there, and even to this day, I go very hard at it, and then I just slowly like peter off. I don't stick with it. I'm not consistent. Like according to the app, I'm 22% fluent in German, and when I drop off and come back, it goes down to like 19%, and then I get it back up, and then I fall off again. Just I always say, oh, I don't have time to do it today, or I forget to do it. But what happened was, in kind of keeping up with it, it was a funny coincidence, a funny happenstance that my girlfriend now, Sheila, she absorbs languages like a sponge, and she had already learned German, French, and was working on Russian. So the fact that, even though my reason for learning the language was coming from a bad place, it's ultimately panning out to be kind of good, in that I have somebody else who already knows the language, can help me work through it and learn it. And much like was it President Johnson would speak Mandarin with his wife. It's fun to speak our very broken rudimentary version of the language, at least my very broken rudimentary version, in public, whether it's like, it's like when you're a kid and you get those secret decoder rings and you're writing messages back and forth to your friends, except now we can talk shit about the folks working at Subway in front of them. So I'm still keeping it up. I highly, highly recommend Duolingo for anybody looking to learn a second language. I have also picked up the Spanish course because it is good for me that I learned the language that a growing portion of our population is speaking, especially in my line of work, where sometimes I get into a house and it's nothing but Spanish speakers. So being able to effectively communicate with them will only help me. But I found that it's interesting in terms of, you wouldn't think that it's a very applicable language until you realize that German, up until World War II, was the second most prevalent language in the United States because we had a large number of immigrants from there. And even to this day, Wisconsin specifically, it has a very strong German heritage behind it in history. And I will go into customers' homes and, find that they too speak the language, and I can talk a little bit like, what I'm learning, where I'm at. And it's always interesting. Like, it's more than you would think. There are more speakers of the language than I would have even realized. And so it's fun to have those little moments of discovery, and you can build that connection with your customers and, foster a little bit a deeper bond with them. And I think the entire experience is that much richer for it. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I always thought it was a very crude and not vulgar, but more barbaric language, as far as it's great to yell and shout, because honestly, most people's exposure to the language is thanks to the Nazis and Hitler's speeches, and he is just shouting at the top of his lungs for hours on end. But if you play games like Overwatch, where you have Mercy and Reinhardt speaking, it actually it sounds very elegant and beautiful and flows, and it gives me a desire to learn the language even further. Which reminds me, even then, that I have another coworker who spent time over in Germany and knows a bit about the language. And that was a nice little point that we could bond over and find common ground and start to build a friendship on. So it's one of those things that, again, it was rooted in a terrible place, but keeps coming back in all these unexpected and enjoyable ways. So it only furthers that desire to keep learning the language. I need to figure out how to do it more naturally, because I definitely don't speak it all that well. If you come out to, if you, I'm much better at reading it than I am speaking it. I'm terrible at even trying to get a conversation going with it on basic levels, but every test that I take as far as, reading and translating, I do very well on it. So, Sheila had gotten me The Little Prince in the German version, and I need to start reading that and just translating it, because it's effectively a children's book. And then my mom actually got a book for my son when she was overseas and brought it home thinking it was in another language. And in fact, it was in German. So I could probably read that as well. And that's what I should probably do is, maybe start with like Dr. Seuss books, very simple, repetitive, easy to learn stuff. Just like I'm doing with my own son by reading him Dr. Seuss. It's, a very good way to start learning how to read, and it should translate well to learning another language. But again, it's funny that it's got that weird stigma. So it's Thursday now. I'm not going to have time to get the episode edited together. I at least now have the 3 segments recorded. So tomorrow, Friday, I should be able to finally get those edited, uploaded. And we'll see if I can record another show, because I got another 3 topics ready. I literally don't have the time. Again, worked overtime today, and I had about a half hour between that job and my next job to finish this recording. It's been gnawing at me. I hate not doing the shows, but I get home. I mean, I have to leave at 7 a.m. I don't get home until about 8 o'clock at night. And then I gotta, make dinner. And by the time I sit on the couch, I'm asleep, and it's not even like 9 o'clock sometimes. So I haven't been playing games. I haven't been talking to my friends. I haven't been doing anything except working, and I feel awful about it. But you do what you got to do to pay the bills. So that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of the Unwashed Asses. Again, tell a friend. If you like what you hear on the show, they can get it anywhere, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast. I even throw up, YouTube links. Might be doing a format change as far as trying to incorporate video. But otherwise, yeah, when you listen to this, also check us out on Friday Night Smite. Every Friday between 9 p.m. Central and 12 Central. And then, of course, we have the after show, which is exclusive to our Patreon members, unless you're watching live. So definitely check that out. A lot of good content there with myself, Mezzy, and Sapper Woody. So until next time.
I can feel the end, it's drawing near. It will soon be here. Oh, that much is clear. So shut the doors and turn off the lights. Let us sleep tonight. Let us huddle in the dark. Oh, my lover, you are beautiful, but that beauty comes at such a price. And I know that you'll soon disappear, like the dark and the night.